Hello, welcome to part 2 of my massive series. We're going to look at the modulation oscillator today, and we're just going to look at some of the basic features that are available. So, if we just play this loop, just a nice simple loop, so it may get stuck in your head. So we've currently got a square saw, so let's just go straight to square. And we're going to apply the modulation. So as you can see, it's on. If I just turn all these off so you can see they're not affecting this sound in any way. And the modulation, let's just turn off these three oscillators. If you look at the ring modulation, we have 1, 2 and 3, same with phase, position, but then filter is 1 and 2. So these relate to the different oscillators above, so which one it's going to affect. You can only do one at once. So if you're choosing ring mod, you can only apply it to oscillator 1, 2 or 3. You can't apply it to all three. But the 1 and 2 down here is just essentially selecting filter 1 or filter 2, which one it's going to control. So if we look at ring modulation, and we go to the first oscillator and we just play the sound, and we apply it, you can hear it's doing something. Now this ring modulation is actually oscillating. It's like a tremolo effect for you real musicians out there, you classical people. It's like a tremolo effect, but it's in digital format, and it only modulates the frequencies heard rather than just everything, including stuff that's out of the range of our hearing. So that just modulates and gives it a tremolo effect. So obviously when I turn that right up, it's shortening that waveform right down, it's compacting it and making it quite fast, giving it its kind of I don't know, it's a bell tone maybe. More, that's how people describe it. It's just got a bit more air and glass to it. It's got that kind of texture. It does affect other things up there more. It's like the digital hybrid sounds. You will get more of an effect out of it. Okay, let's just move on to phase. We're just going to keep this short and sweet. So if we go to phase mode, so ring mod's turned off. So the phase mode dramatically alters that sound. And what it's doing there essentially behind the scenes is adding harmonics. So if I quickly show you here, we'll just add in an instance of Pro EQ. If I turn up this phase, let's just get this going here. You can see there's a lot more going on in the sound there. You can see there the fundamental frequency there, and then it's repeating, shall I say, not repeating, and it just adds more harmonics into the sound and essentially changes it. So that's as simple as it gets, and it just comes in handy for bass lines and kind of adding a bit of like a detune effect. So if we just turn this down to -12, it really gives you kind of that modern like EDM kind of bassline sound. So it can be used in everyday production, these modulation effects. If we head to positions, make sure phase is off, head to the position here, and we're going to turn that on for oscillator 1, 2. Now you can hardly tell there's a difference. If we just drop the pitch, it's all I can describe it. It's like an LFO. It's affecting. If we just do this as -12, so it's going a whole octave. What it's doing is it's affecting the wavetable position, so flitting between square and the saw wave position in this particular instance. But it's very, very subtle. The best way, I'd say again, is probably using a digital hybrid sound and possibly using some of these modes. It's very similar to some of these modes which were explained in the previous video, but it's one to experiment with, especially if you're going to be using the LFOs here and routing them over to the position or the ring modulation, whatever you're going to be using. We will go into that in a later video. And moving on finally to filter. Now if we look at filter 1 here, we're going to put a daft on because it's the most obvious one. Okay, and we're going to turn this on for filter 1. It's just modulating essentially what you'd do here if you was automating. It just gives you a bit of control. Really obvious. And then that comes into its own world if you start detuning. So it's adding a bit of it's just giving it a bit of substance, a bit of bass in there. And it comes in handy because you can then mix that with the phase or the filter position, and you can create these complex sounds. Very popular amongst sound designers, all these kind of effects. This is probably not the most advanced in the synth technology, but you get the general idea. So that's a quick look at them. There's not too much to explain, but if you look at my online blog that goes alongside each video, shall I say, I'll explain things in more depth there, stuff that I can't fit into a video. So that's essentially what they are, and what we'll do is we'll go into a later date, we'll go into LFO. So if let's just get rid of it off there. I'll just quickly show you. Let's just get rid of that. Right, we can say filter modulation. We can just add that pattern, and we can really affect our sound and how we want it. Which gives you a bit more effect, and it's essentially between the green and the grey. It's going back and forth depending on the speed you set it. So what we'll do is we'll look at that at a later date. We are going to move on to the noise and feedback section next, and then we'll move on to the filters, the inserts, and then finally the effects, and then we'll start looking at all these tabs here and just seeing exactly what they are doing. And then these, because there's a lot of things you can do. You can really beef up your sound and create some cool effects in there. So that's ring modulation, phase, position, and filter frequency modulation. We'll go into more depth once I've got all these basic videos out of the way, but you can see how it affects the sounds, and if you read the blog that goes alongside this video, you will understand it in a bit more depth with a few diagrams in there. So thank you for watching. I will see you in part 3, where I'll be covering the noise and the feedback. Thanks for watching.